Or excuse me, 5:30. So I will call to order this meeting of the Park Committee for Wednesday, September 13th, 2017, 5:30 p.m. We have with us the full committee, including Alderman John Vanderleest, Alderman Andy Nicholson, Alderman Chris Rury, and myself, Alderman Dave Menedy. First thing is approval of the minutes of the August 9th. Any discussion? We have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Rury to approve the minutes of the August 9th meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, we have an amended agenda. Everybody aware of that? Okay. So we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Rury to adopt the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item, presentation and update on the Bear Creek Preservation Foundation's achievements and goals.
Okay. Bear Creek Preservation Foundation, as you know, has been in existence since 1997. They're a nonprofit organization whose mission is to facilitate and preserve and restore the Bear Creek area in order to enhance its value, its recreational value, its economic value, its educational resource for generations to come. They have teamed up with the city over the year for many, many different projects, which include purchasing property, trail projects, invasive vegetation removal, and restoration of natural areas. In addition, they regularly program activities at Bear Creek to get people out into the nature area. They have recently just hired a new executive director, and they have requested just an opportunity to meet with the park committee for introductions and a short update on where they're going. At this point, I recommend you open the floor to allow them to speak.
Motion to open up the floor for interested parties.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to open the floor to hear from interested parties. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. If you'd like to speak, come on forward and give us your name and address for the record, and we look forward to hearing from you.
She did such a good job. I don't even know if we need to be up here.
Sure you do.
Motion to receive and place on file.
No, we want to hear from you.
Good evening. I'm Katie Johnson. I'm the new executive director and of the Bear Creek Preservation Foundation, or the BCPF. I have with me Holly Basin, and she is our communications director, and we're just, like she said, here to introduce ourselves and the good work that our organization accomplishes. So I'll give you a little background on myself. I have been working in nonprofit development and management for approximately 10 years, worked with over 100 different nonprofits in that time to build efficiency and capacity. So that's why I'm with Bear Creek. So this is officially my 7th day, so I've got to be an expert by now, right? But however, in those 7 days, I have learned that the BCPF and the City of Green Bay have been partners in preserving, restoring, and maintaining the Bear Creek Greenway since the inception of the BCPF in '97. So going forward, I would like to strengthen and build upon that relationship to better serve the City of Green Bay and Bear Creek. And since I have only been with the organization for 7 days, I'm going to allow Holly to provide you with a brief overview of what our organization does and its programs.
Thank you.
All right, well, as Katie said, I'm Holly Baseman, and Charlie Frisk, our board president, wanted to be here tonight, but he had another commitment. But if Charlie had been here, he would have talked to the passion and care that we have for the Bear Creek Greenway. So I'll do my best to do that as well, and I'll do it quickly because I know there's time constraints. So as Donnie very well mentioned, we've been around since 1997, and we work to restore, preserve, maintain the Greenway the best that we can to make it enjoyable for all of Green Bay and the surrounding communities that come and enjoy it. And one of the ways we do that is we do a lot of invasive species removal and native plantings. And every year we hire summer interns and pull them from area universities, and they come out and spend 100% of their time in the Greenway doing such things as pulling invasive species so that that natural habitat can grow. One of the things that Charlie would have talked about passionately tonight is his role in education out in the Greenway. He, on a volunteer basis, has worked with the Green Bay Area School District to provide field trips out in the Greenway. And we also provide monthly hikes that are open to the public. And Charlie was just out there this last Saturday, had 55 people show up, 30 of them kids. And they all splashed in the creek and got incredibly dirty and caught fish and turtles and all kinds of things. And the kids marvel at everything from how soft a snapping turtle is to just figuring out how many fish there are in a creek. So just those kinds of fun things too. The other thing that we do is we work with area companies, schools, and we just have them come out and do things like buckthorn removal, which is as unglorified as it sounds, but super important in helping us maintain that natural habitat out there. And it provides an opportunity for people to come out and get hands-on experience with what we do. So those partnerships are super important too, because it's all volunteer time that people are coming out. And so buckthorn removal, repairing boardwalks, which again is why we're here tonight. So just kind of those things. And then like in April, we had our annual cleanup. So we had about 100 people come out and help remove buckthorn, clean up trash, and plant native seed in a field area. So just some of the good things that we've been trying to do to help keep Baird Creek as wonderful as it is, and help the city of Green Bay get some recognition for having just another great park experience for people to come in and use. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Nicholas so that he can tell you about the boardwalk that got crushed in a prescribed burn that we did last spring, and he's going to explain how the troop wants to come in and help us repair that.
That's item 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you have to call them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Baird Creek Parkway, a lot of it is in my district, so I'd be happy to work with you as time moves along. I know that a lot has been accomplished in the years since the organization was formed, and we want to continue that partnership. So thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Okay. Donnie, do you have some more
Yeah,
comments?
I would just like to also jump
Sorry.
on.
Go back up.
Go ahead, sit down.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to really thank you guys and the organization for everything that you've done out there. Without them, that area would not be as great as it is. So we thank you for all your time and donations as well.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
Return to regular order of business, Dave?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Second. Motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to return to the regular order of business. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Any discussion by the committee? Question?
What's the motion you want?
Receive and place.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to receive and place on file. Some discussion?
Yeah,
Yes.
just real quick comment, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wanted to thank the group as well, because Parks, as we all know, usually is at the bottom of the totem pole for funding, and it's groups like this that make Parks in Green Bay what they are today, which is great, and so keep up the good work. I need more of it. Thanks.
You bet. Okay, so we have a motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Items received and placed on file. Next item is consideration of possible action on the request by an Eagle Scout to construct a section of
Thank you.
boardwalk in the Baird Creek community. Bonnie?
Okay, Nicholas Kepper contacted the city and Bear Creek Preservation Foundation, and he'd like to reconstruct a damaged section of the boardwalk. You can see by the pictures there. This is the area that he's looking to do, and it's for his requirements for his Eagle Scout badge. He's here to give a brief presentation because part of that requirement of earning that badge is to make a presentation to this committee. Nicholas?
Motion to open the floor.
We have a motion by Alderman Weary, seconded by Alderman Vandalese to open the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Hi, thank you for being here. Could you tell us what it's all about?
Well, I'm Nicholas Keeper, and this is what I need to become an Eagle Scout. I'm currently a Life Scout in Troop 1172. So, as you mentioned, I will be removing and replacing a boardwalk that was damaged, and I hope to improve it by making a longer and more structurally sound boardwalk so that it covers a wider portion of that depression.
Mhm.
Right now, the hikers and bikers have made a path that's cutting around the broken boardwalk a bit into the forest, and that's causing unwanted erosion around the area. So making this new boardwalk will help make a safer path and lessen and control these effects of erosion. And I will also be adding gravel in some spots around the trail just for general improvement and safety.
I've seen this section myself, and I know that it can definitely use some improvement to make it more accessible to the public. So thank you for taking on the project. Are there any questions by the committee? Alderman Lee.
Yeah, thanks again, Nick. You doing this fall or in spring, or when are you?
Yes,
looking
this
to-
fall.
Okay. How far in is this? Do you have to haul everything in and out yourself, or?
We will probably use wheelbarrows
Yeah.
and to transport the lumber and tools and such.
Yeah. Oh, looks great.
Okay, any other questions?
Looks like a real nice plan. Be a real added factor out there, these places, so thank you very much.
Yep.
Motion to return to regular order of business.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
We have a motion to return to the regular order of business. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Alderman Nichols.
I have some contingencies.
Let's,
All costs are the responsibility of the Eagle Scout, all proper hold harmless agreements and permits being obtained. All materials and supplies must meet the city building codes. And once installed, it becomes a city property, and park staff has final approval of the plans.
okay, our staff will work with you to get the project going ahead. Okay? Is that part of your motion, Andy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by
Second.
Alderman Weary, to approve the project with those conditions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, and good luck. I look forward to seeing the project when it's completed.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Third item is consideration with possible action on the tree removal fee for 340 North Broadway. Donnie?
The project was discussed at the last park committee on August 9th. The motion at that meeting was to receive and place it on file. At the city council meeting on August 15th, Alderman Zima recommended to refer this back to the committee. At this point, I suggest you turn it over to Alderman Zima.
Okay, Guy?
We discussed all the parameters surrounding this event that took place, the highly irregular cutting down of trees without going through the normal process required to go through Improvement Services Committee, et cetera. And I know I don't know if, is it going back on the Improvement Services Committee to set a policy regarding,
I don't,
to renew our policy
I
or
don't
to
know.
reinforce our policy?
it's not on tonight's agenda.
I understand that, but there were a number of things that were going to be done, and it was all mixed up a little bit because there was hold harmless agreements with the on-Broadway people regarding the planters, that they couldn't plant anything into, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when we dug into it, this is probably a couple months ago already, how long ago is this? It's not that important, but when we had the discussion before,
Yeah.
although the story changed a little bit from time to time, and I'm not sure what the exact true story was, but I think they had requested to see if they could take down the trees in front of their property if the Title Town brewery operation. And I was told, at least when I went up to investigate about it after I'd learned that it had been cut down for a constituent, that they had requested it, but it was turned down by our forestry department. They said no, because all those trees were planted, and probably the only member that could probably remember any what I'm about to say was probably Mr. Hennig, and that was back around 20 years ago. I had initially put in a request for about $3 million to start the upgrade of Broadway. And after a bit of a struggle, we did get that, and a lot of work was done on Broadway to the result of which we see today, a much improved area. But at that time, trees were brought in at the cost of around about $5,000 a pop. But I don't think it went as far as where the subject property is. It was between Dousman and Walnut. And that project was probably more money spent than should have been for what we got. But the second half of the project, which was another $1.75 million the following year, we did decide to go to bid. And at that time, the planting, which was continued, was done, I believe, for considerably less than that. But nonetheless, it was done at some cost to the city, as well as the implementation of putting lighting on these trees. And if you go and look, there's trees in front of doorways of all kinds of properties on Broadway in a similar situation. And I guess when they couldn't really get permission to have them taken down, they just decided to cut them down themselves. At least this is the way. And then our Department of Public Works assessed a damage fee, which is kind of a stretch of the imagination also, because is it damage when you just go cut something down? Another damage usually means there's an accidental thing that occurs for whatever reason. But anyway, it was done, in the fee that was charged for what would be like tree replacement there was about $550 a tree. Well, let me tell you, those are mature trees. Those trees had in the neighborhood of 20 years growth on them. And if you just look right across the street from where they are, they're growing there. But these folks didn't want them. Well, I've been on Improvement Services Committee when we've had constituents in our neighborhoods come and ask to have nuisance type trees taken down. And I tell you, it was like an act of God. In fact, most of the time it was turned down, even if people were willing to pay to have it done. And we tried to work out some arrangements with people, and we were never successful. I think Mr. Nicholson's ward had a whole street that they wanted to take down nuisance trees on a whole street. And that was not successful either. But here we go. All of a sudden, we don't follow the city's rules. We just cut them down. And then we give a penalty. Penalty's the wrong word. I'm sorry, I retract that. We assess them the cost of what like a new tree would be. Well, that wasn't a new tree. That had the maturity of the age of the trees, maybe more than the age of the trees that we paid $5,000 a piece to put between Walnut and Dousman. These were more mature trees. And I think that, okay, it's done, it's done. There's not much you can do about it. We're supposed to be figuring out what our policies are going to be regarding this for the future. And I know that's not on the agenda, but this situation did not take into account the true cost of a tree with that type of caliber, or the fact that there was equipment attached to these trees. Granted, it was 18, 20 years old. It maybe had a depreciated value, but nonetheless, I remember pretty distinctly that the lights that were put to highlight the trees, to try to give the ambience that all of us like at Christmas time and in the evening in the summer, those lights in the trees give a extremely nice ambience. And so they were just cut down, and I guess the equipment that we had there was just trashed, just thrown away, whatever. I don't know what happened to it, but I did. And I have a friend that took pictures of it all. They're just laying there next to the stubs of the trees. So I don't know. I don't want to belabor forever about it, but that $1,550 that was assessed for that is way under the market and didn't take into account any of the equipment that was taken. Now, I don't know, did the city recover the equipment? Does anybody know?
The city recovered, are you talking about the lights?
Yes.
Those were not our equipment, those were owned by Broadway. And,
They were owned by Broadway.
yeah, they put them up. They were part of their costs when they went and did those, when they did the planters as well. The only
Well, I'm
thing-
not so sure about that,
Okay.
because I remember
Okay.
very
I
clearly
don't know
that
for
we,
sure.
well, okay, you don't know for sure, so
Well,
don't be just
I'm gonna tell
inventing
you that.
things. Because I remember very clearly that these things were bid, and I had a press conference about it to show some of the excessive costs that were charged for the improvements on Broadway in the first phase of it. And we eliminated a lot of that cost. I think the second phase, we saved at least $500,000 for doing the same sort of things by bidding it separately rather than just a sole provider contract. So I don't know. I know that they were in the neighborhood of $2,000 apiece for the lights that were put up there. Now, if you tell me that those particular trees were paid for by On Broadway, I'd be very surprised about that. I don't want to call you a liar either.
No, I'm gonna get Steve Grenier down here, because he dealt with this situation. The only part that the park department had on it was to come up with the calculation of the trees. We did not remove those trees.
Okay, let's just stick with that for now then.
Okay.
Because maybe you can just hold this item. I'm just interested that proper compensation is given to the city for this. I think it was highly irregular, shouldn't have been done, but I understand that we're going to tighten up the policies. There was some hold harmless agreements and all sorts of stuff. But I think some value should be, a true value should be put to it, and that's what should be assessed.
Thank you, Guy. Mr. Grenier is here. If I could just say that when this was before our committee, and I don't remember what the date was, we talked about it in detail, and we had our foresters here talking about the condition of the
We
trees,
had a long conversation.
what the value of the trees was, and you know, the trees were not in very good condition, as I recall, and that had something to do with determining the value. But this was
No, Mr. Chairman, really, I have to take exception to that. That was sort of something that was said. You can go across the street and see the exact same trees that were planted at the exact same time. And these trees were not in any shape, form, or manner dying.
Okay, well, yeah. Do we want to hear from Steve first, or can we just discuss it?
Well, I just don't like us making up history to conform with what's happened.
No, but I just, Guy, I just want to,
Sure,
want you to have the same information that our committee did when we reviewed this before. So, Steve, can you give us a little report on it like you did before? I know a lot of it.
Well, I guess I just walked in, so I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Okay. The trees on Broadway that Mr. Zima has been talking about,
Never cut down.
there was some electrical lights on the trees. There was, do I remember there was some grading or something around the trees, and I remember when you came before our committee, you talked about how there had been discussions with On Broadway about the condition of these trees and what their vision was for trees in that section. Is that right?
Well, the original vision, when they asked for the walls to be put in around the tree pits, I believe that was in 2012. Their original intent was to fill those walls in up to the height of the wall, and during the discussion on getting the permitting for those walls, it was made very clear to them that they couldn't fill them in because that would kill the trees. That caused them to change their original intent and build what's out there currently, which is about a 2 or 2.5 foot high wall that is not filled in. There is some, they worked with Forestry Department as far as what types of plantings they could put in there. And ultimately it turned out that these walls are not meeting the original vision that OBI had for it. As a matter of fact, the current executive director has approached me about potentially planning a phased removal of these things because they didn't turn out as, with what they wanted. There is electrical that feeds most of these tree pits. Most of that electrical is in disrepair. The way that that was designed was the practice at the time, and the electrical system is actually strapped or affixed or somehow mounted to the tree, and as the tree continues to grow, it stretches the electrical, the conductors in the conduit, pulls the conduit apart. Very expensive, if at all able to be maintained. I don't know necessarily, from what I remember from when the Foresters gave their presentation, they had a worksheet that they provided to the committee that documented how they came up with the cost. So I can't speak to that. That's something they do, but I remember seeing that worksheet at a previous meeting. So as far as the determination of what the replacement cost of that tree was, that's something that Forestry came up with, not DPW.
Is it correct that the lighting itself was owned by OBI or maybe paid by the bid district or something, or is that not correct?
To be honest with you, I don't know, because there was a mixture of lighting. There was lighting up in the tree itself, and then there was some lighting and electrical appurtenances that came up from the underground conduit that was affixed to the tree. I believe the system that was more so the underground and, if you will, the power supply type, was put in during the beautification efforts in the 90s. I don't know about the in-tree lighting. I know down here on Washington Street and at several locations, there is some lighting here that Downtown Green Bay Incorporated, I believe, paid for to put in some of these lights. I don't know if that was the case on Broadway or not. That probably predates my tenure here at the city.
Okay, but in this case, it isn't that the adjoining property owners just cut down the trees. They got permission from.
They were working within.
They
were working within the conditions that were found within the whole harmless agreement that was executed for the, I think it's 43 pits or something along that line. There's a discrete number, and the locations are identified. These were 3 of those pits that were specifically covered by the whole harmless agreement executed between the city and OBI.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the committee members? If not, could we hear from our forester on the estimates?
Well, I just want to correct something here. I don't believe there was, I guess I'm more of a historian on this than Mr. Grenier, because he wasn't here at that time. But I was very involved with phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. Phase 2 of the project is when these plantings took place, which was like a year after the first one. So there's like a year's difference in the value in the age of the trees. Although the second planting was different than the first planting. They did not plant as big a caliper. So they were cheaper, but those trees are somewhere between 15 and 20 years old. I think closer to 20 than 15, but roughly that age. So they had developed a caliper of at least this big. And we had paid quite a bit. And to just say that those trees only had the value of replacement tree, a newer tree, I think is not correct. And so again, that equipment was all part of the project that we bid, and that there may have been some additional lighting. I don't want to quarrel about that. At Christmas time, we put other lights up in the trees, and I don't know anything about that. I'm talking about the direct lights that shine up on the tree. We have a new system now, which is better than the old one, but those were purchased at that time. And they may have failed, I don't know, but as far as I know, that they've been working right along all these years. Maybe with some repair, I don't know. But the original equipment was purchased by the city.
Okay, let's hear from our forester.
I believe you all have a copy of the appraisal sheet. This is Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisers, 9th edition. This is the standard formula used for appraising landscape trees, private, yard trees, and we use it as a street tree in park tree appraisal process. The 3 trees that were in front of the Titletown district, their diameter was 8 inches. I don't have the exact diameter of the trees across the street, but they are larger than 8 inches. I think they're around 14 and 15 inches. So there's a little bit of discrepancy. And again, the planting of these trees and the purchase of these trees predates my career here with the city too. So I had no information on the original purchase cost of what those trees were. So the standard practice with this appraisal procedure is that you have a replacement cost of the largest transplantable size tree, which is 2.5 inches in caliber. That's what we plant. That's the recommended size to plant because the root base that you're taking with that tree is appropriate so you get the faster growth out of that tree. You can plant the 6-inch diameter tree, but it's only got the root ball of a 2-inch diameter tree, so all of the tree growth is going to go into the root system. So the tree basically just sits there. It doesn't get any bigger. So that's where the 2.5 inches comes from. The wholesale cost for a honey locust locally is $120 for that size tree. That's where that comes in that appraisal process. The rest of the calculations here are part of the math that I did not create in the formula, but the calculations go through. You come down to line number 4 there, which is the basic price. Basic price is if there's absolutely nothing wrong with that tree at that size, that replacement cost, that tree comes up to be $1,100. The species rating, the basic value, condition class, and location class below are percentages that are used during the observation of the tree, and that actually depreciates off of that basic price. So you run those calculations out, and it comes up to an appraised value of $550 rounded per tree. 3 trees, that's where the $1,650 comes from.
Would you figure out where you went from 1,100 to 500? You didn't give much detail about that, but
Well, if you take 1,100 and then multiply it by 0.8, you come up with 887. Then multiply
so
it.
would you just...
That's the species, 0.8.
So that type of tree, you say, has a lower value than the normal tree?
All trees have a lower value than the basic value. The species rating is set by, again, by the ISA. There's state rankings for those based on hardiness, the zone, and things like that. Honey locust is an 80% species.
And these are
rating.
new plantings, correct?
This is just, the species rating is specific just to tree species. Tree could be 100 years old, it could be 2 years old, it could be 10 years old. The species rating stays the same for that tree species.
Well, I don't want to be combative with you, but if you buy a tree with a 2.5-inch diameter, or one with a 5-inch diameter, or one with a 8-inch diameter, or a 10-inch diameter, you pay
Right.
more accordingly. And of course, the larger the tree, the more costly it is to even plant it.
True.
So while I don't want to directly dispute any of these numbers, these were maturing trees that had a greater value than when they were put in.
Yeah, if they were in a,
I think we paid
Because
more
of
than
the-
$500 for it when we put them in originally.
that may be.
Because I remember how outraged I was that they charged about $5,000 for the ones in the next block. And it's because they had a larger caliber. They wanted a more mature tree because they didn't want to wait for the growth.
Right.
And on the second planting, we did do a smaller diameter, but, we didn't plant just simple saplings either. We planted a pretty decent sized tree,
Right.
and that has matured. So I don't know how you want to diminish the value of that tree. That tree increased in value as it grew. The replacement of that would be much, much more expensive if it was to be planted there like it is across the street.
Well, I think the biggest discrepancy that's coming in is the original purchase cost of those trees compared to what a purchase cost today would be for a tree on the market. I don't think anybody would pay $5,000 for a tree today.
Well, the city did, but
And again, I don't have any record of that, so I can't base an appraisal on that.
But are you saying that a normal tree would be around $1,108 to purchase of that caliber?
Yeah,
What
at
caliber is that?
2.5-inch caliber, yes.
That's a 2.5-inch caliber?
No, the tree that you would purchase. So your wholesale cost, your replacement cost is based on a 2-inch, 2.5-inch caliper tree. The tree itself was 8 inches in caliper, the 3 trees.
Well, okay, I think that speaks for itself to the committee. The tree was 4 times bigger than what they're billing them for. So, I mean, it was extraordinary how it went out. There had been some talk. I'm not saying people didn't talk about it, but it didn't go through this committee here. And every other tree that's being taken down in right of way has to go through the Improvement Services Committee. This did not go through. It was just inconvenient for them to do that, I guess, and they just cut them down, and we assessed the damage to it, and, well, we worked out the nice little formula, and it's, the whole thing was about $1,600. I have a feeling we paid something like that to put them in the first place. But we had a more mature tree, and I think that's an unfair valuation to charge them. These folks got a lot of money tipped to them, and they just decided they didn't want the trees for whatever reason. Everybody else on the street lives with the trees in front of their doors and everything else. In fact, nobody complains about it. But these folks wanted to do something different, and then we let them get by with a very, very minuscule fee.
I think the bottom line here is that when they approached the city, we did an estimate, and that's the number we gave to them. And they
Was that
agreed.
before or after?
The trees were not removed until the city received payment on the tree, which is part of the policy that we use. When a tree doesn't meet a request of being dead, dying, diseased, or dangerous, and there's a public improvement in place, that's where the city policy clearly states that this is a process that takes place.
But they have to come before the Improvement Services Committee to get permission.
No, it's
No.
not
If
stated in the
I want
policy.
to take down the tree in front of my house, I just can't go take a saw to it and cut it down.
Correct.
I'll probably get a nice fine for that.
Based on this
Or
appraisal
would I
process.
just get $500 charge if I don't like a tree?
No.
Because we're setting some precedent here, folks.
Well,
If that's all you got to do for a nuisance tree that you don't like, is cut it down and accept what the new tree replacement cost would be, I think you're going to find there's going to be a lot of people willing to do it.
This, I can speak specifically to that. This spring, we had a case on the west side of town where a resident wanted 2 trees cut down. They didn't meet our criteria. I was driving through doing inspections and I found 2 tree service people cutting the tree down. They cut 2 trees down. Same exact appraisal process that I did here. They were much larger trees. Those trees came up to about $1,900 a piece. That person was assessed, invoiced for $1,900 a piece for the 2 trees.
And how big a caliper were those?
20, 22 inch,
It's twice as big.
different species. But it's the same appraisal process was used.
Well, again, I think the committee needs to look at that, because in the past, they had to come before a committee, and the committee had to decide whether, and then we decide what it's gonna cost to replace the tree with another tree, what it's gonna cost to take a tree down, et cetera. So,
Well, I think in regard to Broadway, there are discussions between our staff and OBI about what to do in the future with all the landscaping along Broadway. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Grenier, but I think the intent was that if there's some type of an agreement negotiated between the city and OBI, that would be brought to us, and we could concur or not concur with it. Is that?
That is the directive that I have taken from the committee, yes,
Yeah.
based on prior discussion.
so that's from here forward, correct?
Yeah.
Well, it always was that way before, and I guess some people have taken things into their own hands, and they've been assessed whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. That probably should have come before the committee also. But
Yeah. The only
I just
I've been on
find it
this.
irregular, and it's not in compliance with the whole rest of the street landscaping. They decided to do something different,
Well, it was in.
and the equipment and everything is lost. We paid something for that equipment. Was there anything assessed for the equipment?
That's not part of this appraisal.
Okay, what happened to that? I understand isn't your responsibility.
Yeah, I don't have the answer for you on that, but, I think that what we had here, I've been on this committee for 3.5 years, and the only time I remember tree issues coming to our committee is if there's a real disagreement between the property owners and the city about it. Then when there's an area of disagreement, but there are issues that go on every day, I'm sure, or at least on a regular basis, where we have to evaluate the condition of trees and make some decisions on it. And I don't think we have every decision come to our committee. Is that correct, Don?
That's correct.
And that's why we have some policies in place here.
Mr. Chairman, they don't come before our committee because it's the city making the decision if a tree is diseased or causing danger or is dead, whatever. That's just part of their administrative work day to day.
Right.
But when people want something different than the ordinary, they have to come before a committee. It doesn't happen too often, but I'm sure Mr. Nicholson can remember, was it Deborah Lane or Fiesta Lane or something? The folks I was sitting on the committee at that time, and they'd come and the whole block wanted them down.
Right.
And I can tell you, I have a very dirty tree in front of my office. It drops everything every day. Every time I mow the lawn, I have to go pick up sticks and everything else. Unfortunately, it was a bad choice made of what tree was planted. I don't think we're planting those anymore.
No.
But again, I had people on Elmore and in the neighborhood of Maple Street that I remember distinctly them coming, and they wanted dirty trees taken down, and we had probably a 2-hour conversation about it and trying to work something out. But I don't know. I just think it's irregular. I think it's very modest, less than market value was placed on what they did, and our equipment was trashed in the process also, and nobody seems to know about it. So every place else on Broadway, everything else is still intact. They're still operating. And these people just take it down, and we're not reimbursed for equipment. I don't think in my opinion, we're not reimbursed for what the real value of the tree was.
Okay,
And they didn't get permission from us.
Thank you, Guy. Some of my committee members would like to say a few words. So,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I do remember, thanks, Brian. I remember when this came before INS and we looked at the hold harmless agreement, it was pretty loosely worded and had a pretty big loophole in there. But, I remember looking at it with Director Grenier, and I think that's the problem here, is that hold harmless. If it had been anywhere else in the city and they wouldn't have that agreement, I think maybe we'd have a little more leeway. I think our forester just following our policy we have in place, so he's doing exactly as we've always done. So I don't know what we can do there. And that hold harmless is the kicker. I mean, that's what's got us. As far as the equipment, we need to find out who owned it.
They're holding the city harmless if
Alderman Zima,
anything goes wrong.
Alderman Zima, please. I didn't interrupt you. I know you have some things to add, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of this because we have a lot of other items too. As far as who owns the equipment, we don't even know who owns it. If we found out on Broadway owns it, they have a case against them. If we found out we owed it, then we can go
On
back
Broadway
after
doesn't
them.
own it unless we gave it to
Well,
them.
then we need to find that out.
We paid for it. I guarantee you the
I
city.
don't know,
paid
Director,
I don't know who owns
I
it.
guess Director Kramer, as far as what we can charge for this tree, this is the policy we have in place, and looking at the hold harmless agreement, did we follow everything we can? I don't know if legally we can go for more.
That's, the policy we have in place is that formula.
I mean, I would like to too. I don't want to encourage people to go down chopping trees they don't like. I know Alderman Nicholson had that issue, that whole street didn't like their tree, but we don't want to encourage people to chop trees down, but I don't think we can do any more here.
I tell you, I'm gonna tell
So
people that if they don't like a tree, go ahead and cut it down.
Well,
and
and the important thing to notice here, Alderman Zima, as you even stated, is they had a hold harmless agreement in place here.
What does home harmless mean?
Well, when we read it, they had, all they had to do was to pay the replacement.
Anything in connection with those planters.
If you read the
That's what it
agreement,
said.
though,
The city's held harmless.
Alderman Nicholson, did you have some
Well, I had a
comments?
question for Alderman Zima. What is a fair price then?
Well, it's a mature tree, and between that and the equipment, I think it probably should be about 3-4 times what it is here. But that would include equipment and everything else. I know we paid about $2,000 a piece for the lights, and that might have included the lines to
And I know,
get to it. It
excuse
wasn't
me,
just
Mr.
the
Chairman, excuse
fixture.
me,
It
I think we
wasn't
went
just
over
the
all those
fixture.
costs already. All that the Parks Department has is the tree. So the equipment is not even this part of this committee. We have talked about the tree. If we charge more for the tree, then don't they have a legal case to come back and say, hey, this other guy who cut down these 2 trees, he charged far, far less for, and go to court over that? I think we need to stay with our precedent. If you want to change it, that's fine for the future. I have no problem with that, but.
Yeah, I guess I'd suggest that when an agreement is renegotiated on this with OBI, that we pay attention to that agreement, and, you know, if there are conditions that you want to put in, you know, whatever, we certainly can talk about that at this point. Right now, we're talking about something that has occurred already. It isn't that the property owner just cut down the trees. They did it with consultation with the city. They were given an estimate of what they would have to pay, and they paid that. So I don't know what we can really do. It's really looking at the past here, and I think we should look forward to the future, look toward the future, and, you know, if there are things that OBI or anybody else wants to do there, we take a look at them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I asked a question of Zimmo, and I don't remember receiving an answer.
You asked
I'll ask
what I
the
thought the
question
value was.
again. How much do you think?
Well,
What
it's
did
a
you say,
mature
3,
tree.
4, 5
If you had to
times?
replace that tree with that size, it would be much more than $557.
Okay, well, where do we get a,
Why don't you ask the staff to go find out what a tree that caliber would cost to purchase to plant somewhere in the city?
okay, who do I ask, the forester?
Yeah.
Well, I think that'd
Would
be
you
a
know?
good place to start.
You don't plant 8-inch diameter trees. It'd be dead in 2 years.
What's the most, biggest one?
2.5 inches.
How much would something like that cost?
That would be on the appraisal
1108.8,
sheet. No, the.
80 cents?
No, the replacement cost would be $250 for a 2.5-inch tree. Where the $1,100, the basic price, comes in the multiplier based on the diameter of the tree that we're appraising. So 8 inches is figured into,
So was that the value of the tree, the 1108.80?
well, that gives you your basic price, your starting point. From there, you depreciate for the species of the tree. You
Right,
go-
I understand that.
Okay, and then down below that, you go to the condition of the tree. So these trees were not in as good condition as the trees across the street. They're struggling. All those trees are in an 8-foot by 8-foot area, so that's the only place those roots can grow. So it's not like a tree in a front yard or in a park. The trees are struggling. A condition class of 0.7 would be considered
Right.
fair if you put it in English.
If we took a tree down from someone that requested it, would follow the policy, how much would we charge them with our equipment and everything? Would we charge anybody
If
by
we were to take
utilizing?
if we did the removal, the
Right.
city crew did the removal, yeah, we would charge accordingly. It'd be
Okay.
based on time.
All right.
This
So
wasn't
what-
built into here
They
because
took the
they
tree
took
down.
the tree down themselves.
Oh, they took the tree
Correct.
down themselves?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, there's no labor in here.
Okay, I thought there was some of our
No.
labor in there.
No.
If I
There's
remember
no
the
labor, no
discussion we
equipment
had
cost.
at a prior meeting, you know, there was really no city equipment or city labor involved in taking down these trees. Am I right?
My time was all that's in.
Yeah. And if there would have been, it would have been added on.
So
Yes.
what is involved with the city? The $1,108.80 to plant this tree?
They depreciated it based on what they considered the
Right.
condition of the tree and the species of the tree.
Right, right.
They said that's the base value of a good tree, I guess.
$1,108.
The only thing that the city really has involved in this is my time of doing the appraisal.
Okay.
That's it.
Hey, what's that, about an hour?
The actual appraisal, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do
So-
remember years ago when all of the improvements were
So
made.
just a minute, Mr. Chairman, so what would be what would you think would be the total value then with all our time and,
He told you already.
okay. Well, say it again. I guess I have too much wax in my ears. I didn't hear it.
My time's not involved in this appraisal, so the tree is $550.
$550. Okay,
$550 each.
557.
Yeah.
all right.
Per tree.
And Alderman Zima, you think it's more?
I think it was squeaked in the favor of the owners.
Okay. So what would you think would be a fair price then, Mr. Zima?
I think something closer to the $1,100.
$1,100? Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to raise the appraised value to $1,100. And we can have a discussion on that if I can get a second. Guess we don't have a second, or don't have any discussion? So, all right.
You know, I understand what you're trying to do, but, you know, again, we gave a price to the property owner before anything was done there. And-
I understand.
And I don't know that legally we could charge him for any more at this
I
point.
guess we'll just see
That
what
was,
we can do.
that was the agreement. Now, I do remember what Alderman Zim was talking about, that really with all of the improvements on Broadway, there was kind of a hurry to get it in, and when the bids came in, they were high for a lot of different things. Everything from colored pavement to street trees to lighting, to all sorts of things. I don't remember exactly what the amounts were, but, you know, they were high, but, you know, here I think our staff followed the procedure that we have in place for estimating the value of that
They
tree.
didn't follow the procedure of coming before the committee. This is not even allowed to be done. This was part of a streetscaping approved by the Improvement Services Committee and the City Council of Green Bay 18, 20 years ago. 17, 18, 20 years ago, whenever it was. And it was done out of order, and I think a very minimal cost was assessed to them changing it. And I guess they didn't think anybody'd take notice, but somebody who knows every tree in the city of Green Bay practically is the one that spotted it and pointed it out to me, and I actually drive by there most, at least three times a week, and I said, "You're kidding me, I didn't know that." I went and looked at it right away, and I went and took a picture of it. I saw the trees were cut down.
Okay, are there any other motions by the committee?
I'll make the motion to receive and place on file.
Okay, motion to receive and place in file, is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm doing that is because the city gave them the estimate and said, here's what it would cost if those trees come down. And then they took them down, and then for us to come back and say, well, you know, that one you have, just rip it up. We didn't mean it. So legally, I don't want to go down that path. I'm not saying you're wrong with what
I can appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Murray.
I think what they did was wrong, but
I'm somewhat pleased that we at least have something else in place, but I
Glad the light was
really
shown on
felt
it.
egregiously offended by the fact that this was done
Yeah.
without the people who provided all this landscaping in the first place having a say-so about it.
Okay,
It was done administratively, inappropriately,
okay,
Agreed.
I understand.
and
that,
hopefully it
you know,
won't happen again.
I think we are going to have a discussion in the future about the whole landscaping on Broadway, and, you know, we can discuss this further at that point. So we have a motion to receive and place on file. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We'll go on to number 4. Well, I should note for the record that Alderman Vanderleest had to leave because he had another meeting at the county tonight, the County Administration Committee, so we'll note that he's excused at this point. Number 4 is consideration with possible action on a request by Alderman Moore to enhance lighting or install a security gate or other measures at Fireland Park's northwest parking lot to deter late-night meet and greets. Donnie?
Okay. Alderman Moore had come in and expressed his concerns with crime in the parking lot area after hours. And he wanted us to come up with some ways to try to eliminate this problem. We would not suggest installing a gate or a chain due to the additional staff time and costs that it would take to do that. Another option that we discussed was to install security lights in the parking lot. Staff did get a quote for $2,570 from WPS to install 2 security lights on wood poles. It's a one-time cost for the installation, but there would also then be a monthly fee cost of $14.47 per fixture. The yearly cost that would have to be added to the annual budget would be $347.28. We don't have funding for this in the park budget at this time, but we did talk that one of our best options to maybe address this issue would be to request Community Development Fund, block fund grant, that we could possibly use next year to put these lights in. And we'd also like to work with the police to see if they could monitor this parking lot a little more closely. So those are the options we talked about, and Alderman Joe was happy with that result. So
So would an appropriate motion be to refer to staff to work with Alderman Moore to pursue CDBG or?
to secure looking at
police?
community development block funds to fund the two lights at Farland Park.
Okay, discussion, Alderman Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Kramer, the $347 a year, is that some kind of rental fee, or is that
No, that's the
electricity?
cost of the
Just
electricity.
so what, it's not them owning it?
No.
It's the electricity, but it's also ongoing maintenance, so if
Yeah.
a bulb burns out, they'll go and replace that at no charge. So that's part of that. It is kind of a rental fee, but it also pays for the electric.
So if we just had it installed and had them run a line, would it have been cheaper? I mean, it almost sounds
The
like-
cheapest way from a utility cost is for the city to purchase and install the lights and buy that, hire an electrician to install that. You have a bigger upfront cost initially with the installation, and I didn't get a cost for that, but it's gonna definitely be higher than 2,570, but your utility cost would be less each year.
Because is it metered, or do we just, they take into account how many
We
poles
would
they
have to bring
the
in
city?
service and have a separate meter for that, or tie off of the shelter meter for that. So if we own and maintain the lights, we have cheaper utility bills.
Do we know if there have been problems at this park regularly, or is it an occasional thing?
No, this past summer in particular, they've had people that have been there at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, partying out in the park, and, it's disturbing the neighbors. So we tried to do with the police to get them out there a little more often, but it came to this point, and that's his request.
There's really no guarantee here that putting up lights is going to keep
Correct.
people out of the park. So, really a better police presence there would make a lot more sense than anything, even if it's, occasionally from time to time. Alderman Zimmer?
I just want to know, how far is it from the shelter house?
It's really close. It's real close.
Why don't you just run a line off of it and put a light there if you want more lighting in the area? That
Yeah.
always deters people hanging around, so.
It's probably about at least 300 feet away from the shelter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, it's costing you $350 a year. I don't think you'd think a light bulb is going to cost that much at home, so.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion?
Sure,
Alderman
Mr.
Weary.
Chairman, I know there's someone here, I don't know if you wanted to speak to it or not, but I'll make a motion on the floor.
Okay, we have a motion to open the floor. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Alderman Weary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, come on forward, give us your name and address, and tell us what you can that's relevant to the issue.
Bronson Smith, 1525 Smith Street. I live right next to to the park. I see what goes on there every night. My backyard, I get to stare at the park, and every night there's stuff going. Okay, that parking lot is pitch black at night, and every night you got nefarious stuff going on at that inside that lot. In the summer, the local drug dealers will park in that parking lot, and their clients will park in front of my house, and then walk into the pub, and then walk over to the cars. Person meets up with that with the person in the car. 30 seconds later, they turn around, they walk right back to their car, and then they leave. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what just occurred. And that occurs nightly, especially on the weekends, even more. The only way to correct that issue is to light that lot up. The police, there's like, what, 2 officers in my, in my district patrolling, and they're busy doing other things that have a lot higher, priority than driving down Eastman Avenue. I mean, it's just, increasing police patrols would cost a lot more than installing a few lights. Because if you're going to be proactive about it, then you need to add officers. Because, there's like 2 or 3 cops in my area, and they're busy doing bigger and better things. It's just like, I see stuff, I call the police, maybe they show up in an hour, maybe 2 hours. Well, that's has very low priority, so when we have an officer available, we'll get them out there. Well, it's too late, So it's just like, $350 a year doesn't seem like a lot to stem the sale of drugs in a older, more depressed area of Green Bay. I mean, I can say that I live there. So.
Is it, are they the same cars that you see there repeatedly, or are they?
Well, see, that's the thing. That lot's so dark.
Okay.
It's pitch black. I mean, but I see now you guys are discussing installing 2 lights. My idea would be to install 1 light pole with 2 lights aiming to light up both the sections. So it's just like that's just my thought. So
I think we should at this point we should refer it to our staff and to have further discussions with Olive and Moore, and we'll see what kind of options we've got here. I know sometimes the police can put the armadillo in place.
Yeah, for a week, and then it goes bye-bye, and,
But-
it doesn't solve the issue,
Well, although it has been effective, I know in areas in my district where there is activity, people know that they're being watched, even if it's, from time to time, there could be records of license numbers and all sorts of
Well,
things.
nobody's gonna go in there when that thing's there. So, and it's there for about a week, and then they relocate it to some other problem area. So for a week, nobody goes in there, and then it goes away, and then they come right back again. I mean, it's...
Sure. Well, would it be, we're not going to end the discussion here tonight, but would it be okay if we refer it to our staff?
Motion to return to staff.
And all of
Refer to staff.
Okay.
Motion to return the regular order.
Yeah, first we'll return to the regular.
Motion to return to
Is there
regular
anything else
business.
you'd like to add?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you for
Right.
being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have a motion to return to the regular order of business. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now let's...
Motion to refer to staff.
Okay.
I had my finger up first.
Okay, can we take all
Thank
the
you.
discussion first?
Director Grenier, since you're
Get
here,
it going.
for our streetlights, how much do we pay per streetlight? Do they just say, hey, you have 1,000 streetlights and you have to pay X amount per year?
I would have to go back and take a look. I know we routinely have those on the INS committee when a new street light goes in. There's something about $25 meter charge plus the cost of electricity per month. I think a street lit, if there's not an existing meter, we have to have that $25 a month meter charge, and I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $20 a month for the light.
Thanks.
We do have a lot of lights in our parks, and they're rental lights from WPS, and that's what we pay for all the other ones too.
Okay. Are there existing lights in the park, other locations?
Only by the shelter.
By the shelter, okay. Well, for now, can we refer this to our staff to work with all?
Make a motion to-
and,
I did it
talk about
twice.
options? Okay, we have a motion.
Raise your hand.
By Alderman Nicholson to refer it, seconded by Alderman Weary. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll be in touch.
Contact Alderman Moore and work with staff, and hopefully see this back.
You bet. Okay, number 6, consideration with possible action on a request to authorize the law department to commence a court.
5, what happened to 5?
Oh, excuse me, number 5, consideration with possible action on a proposed Wisconsin public easement at Seymour Park. It's Wisconsin Public Service easement.
Correct. On June 14th, the Park Committee directed staff to secure funding to relocate the parking lot at Seymour Park closer to the shelter with a driveway entrance off the cul-de-sac on Oakland Avenue. The RDA granted the funding for the community, through the Community Block Grant Program to get it built this year. Public Works has already hired a contractor and work will begin soon. In order for the parking lot to be installed, Wisconsin Public Service had to relocate the electric pedestal that provided power to the park shelter and park lighting. The pedestal was in the middle of the new parking lot location. Easements were not a requirement when the electrical service was first installed years ago. Although the project and the funding has been approved, the easement has not formally been approved. In the past, WPS did not require us to have these easements for this type of work. They do now. Wisconsin Public Service has already relocated the electrical pedestal. We are now just completing all the paperwork to grant WPS the easement for the lines that are already in place. The Community Development Block Grant also funded the electrical work. So what we're asking you to do is to approve the Wisconsin Public Service utility easement at Seymour.
Okay. the
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to approve the requested easement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now number 6. Consideration of possible action on a request to authorize the law department to commence a court action to vacate the parkway designation necessary to effectuate the property trade with Green Bay Dressed Beef American Foods Group at 1010 University Avenue for the development of the East River Trail connection per the council's approval on June 20th, 2017. Dan, what's going on?
On June 20th, the City Council approved a property trade with American Foods for the East River Trail expansion. The city would give 0.18 acres of parcel 7-706-1 to American Foods for them to place a driveway on. In return, the American Foods was going to give the city 0.55 acres of shoreline property for the expansion of the East River Trail. When this was presented to the Park Committee, it was thought that the property could be traded quickly through a quick, clean, plain deed. A title company researched this, and it was determined that since the property was originally dedicated to the public as Greenway, the process is more complicated than anticipated. The city would have to first petition the court to allow this parkway to be vacated. After the courts approve this, it would have to go through the Plan Commission to make an amendment to the official city map. In addition, the zoning for this small piece of property would have to be changed to be consistent with the JU, which will allow the driveway to be installed. In order for the property trade to occur, the law department will need approval from this committee to petition the court to begin the official city map amendment process.
Okay, well, it sounds like something we have to pursue.
So what are you looking for, Donnie? Approval?
To authorize us to, the law department
So
to-
moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the law department to commence necessary action. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Number 7, consideration with possible action on a request by Green Bay by Dressed Beef American Foods Group for a driveway lease on park property located on the 1100 block of University Avenue. What do we need to do here?
Okay, this agenda item directly relates to what I just was talking about. It can take up to 4 months to go through the process to petition this court and go through the official city map amendment. American Food Groups would like to install the driveway yet this year if possible. They have requested that the city grant them their driveway lease on city property, which we were proposing to do with the trade. In return, this lease would donate their 0.55 acres of property to the city at the same time when the lease is finalized. Both parties would still need to go through the official city map amendment and proceed with the property trade. This will just allow American Foods to be able to get their driveway in this year. So we would move to approve this.
I think the clinic is almost finished, and it makes sense to do something temporary here.
Move to approve.
Got a motion by Alderman Weary,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Nicholson to approve the request. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Number 8, consideration of possible action on the update on the request by Alderman Sawyer to look at ideas or plans to connect the West Side Trail, Fox River, and East River trails. Alderman Sawyer? Okay, Donnie, you want to give us your report?
Which way
Alderman Stoyer, do you want to hear from your staff before you make comments?
That would be fine.
Would that be appropriate? Okay, Donnie?
Okay. We discussed this project at the Park Committee on April 26th. Staff was directed to research this project and bring it back. On August 1, Alderman Stoyer and the park staff met with the Village of Howard and Brown County Planning to discuss the feasibility of connecting the West Side Trail to the Mountain Bay Trail in Howard. The city and the county staff showed great interest in making this connection become a reality. The most direct route would be to build a trail adjacent to the railroad tracks that run directly from Green Bay city limits to the Mountain Bay Trail. The Village of Howard did contact the railroad, and it's unlikely that they would allow a trail to be within this railroad, the railroad right away. It is an active railroad. Instead, the Village of Howard would probably have to make this connection by acquiring adjacent property to the railroad to be built on the trail. Staff from the village and the county both felt that this was a feasible option, and we would begin to explore this in detail. At our meeting in the Village of Howard already took steps to install the first section of the Green Bay city limits.
Okay.
To Highway 41. Funding was already in place to replace Vincent's Road. If you can see on the map there where Vincent's Road is, in 2019. Originally, the plan was to install sidewalks on this road on both sides of their new road. However, after the discussion, the village board approved constructing a 10-foot wide trail on one side of the road instead of 2 sidewalks. Howard Public Works Department is in the process of modifying the engineer documents to make this change. It is not known how long it will take the Village of Howard to make this final connection. There's no funding in place for them as well to acquire the necessary property or install the remaining trail. The city would also have to secure our funding for the connection of the West Side Trail to the city limits to meet up with the new trail on Vincent Road. In 2018, the city will be working with the Green Bay Public School System to create a citywide trail integration system. This will incorporate sidewalks, roads, trails, bicycle routes, and pedestrian traffic. At that time, we would be able to explore the options to connect the West Side Trail to the Fox River Trail. And that's our update.
Okay, Alderman Stoyer?
First of all, thank you, committee. Like was mentioned, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I'll continue on despite the interruptions. We did have a meeting with Jeff Farr, Public Works Director, like it was stated, Howard, Cole Runge, who is the Brown County Principal Planner, Dan Ditchite, and myself. And it was a very positive meeting. So there's a lot of intricacies that go on with extending trails. There's time, there's grants, there's different meetings, there's different groups, cities, municipalities. I was encouraged by it. I was just wondering if there was any information that you had from Howard, Dan, as far as what they may have come up with. And I realize it's early in the process.
Yeah, really, I mean, Donnie kind of pointed out most of it. I'll just summarize it real quickly. They are planning on revising the construction plans for Vincent Road, and you'll see that in the blue highlighted right here. And they're gonna build a multi-use trail alongside instead of 2 sidewalks. And then that will be built in 2019. Our mission will be to connect to Vincent Road somehow, and we'll work with Public Works to figure out the best way to do that, and then we'll secure funding for that. After that, then Village of Howard is going to attempt to try and secure property where that green line is shown, and that'll be property adjacent to the railroad. And they would build the new trail adjacent to the railroad. Now, that could take many years to do that. They feel that it is a potentially feasible option, and they're going to start to explore that now. So, I think that things are in the works, and they're excited about it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not asking for any resolution tonight. I know it's early on in the process, but one of my goals is to connect trails in Green Bay to other trails. This Mountain Bay Trail goes all the way out to Wausau. So I really think that's important. There will be efforts, like I said, to connect to the east side trails as well, but right now I'm really focusing on this. And I know Alderman Weary has worked on some things too with the Ashland Avenue and such. That's another point, but I think we're all pushing forward. We'd like to see some things happen.
Yeah, I think we know from experience with other trails that when you have to deal with multiple property owners and acquisitions for a long section of trail, that it does take time and funding. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's a good plan, I think.
I appreciate the work you did. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. There's things that you want expedited through INS or parks?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think one of the issues that we've had along Bond Street in my district is if you go to the back lot lines with the railroad there, there's been issues with drainage, with trees, with stuff. The neighbors are not ecstatic about that, and I've been kind of holding off on that, and that could be an INS issue. I've briefly talked to Public Works about it, Matt Heckenlabel, and I think it's important that we look at that. I have phone numbers for the railroad as well, and I think it's going to be important in a couple of ways to clean up that area, if you will, but also to possibly, tie in with the trail. So it could work out to that benefit. So that is another item that I am pursuing, but I think it's important that we keep that avenue open as well. But right now, I'm just very pleased with the meeting that we had. Sure, I'd love to see it tomorrow. I know it's not going to happen, but I think it's important that we keep moving forward, especially with the fact that there isn't a whole lot of access to the water, and we're looking at quality of life issues here in Green Bay. And I think this is just another important item for quality of life.
Okay.
So what are you looking for, Chairman?
I think a motion to receive and place it on file.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Knowing that we'll be discussing it again in the future. So, motion
Second.
by Alderman Nicholson, second by Alderman Weary to receive the report and place it on file. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, report of the purchasing manager. Rick?
The item in front of you is request to purchase 100 picnic table frames for a total from R.J. Thomas Manufacturing for a total cost of $18,645. These are the frames. It's just tubular steel that the city assembles and adds plastic recycled lumber. And by purchasing these as components, we save about 50% over the cost of purchasing new tables. We did a bid in 2015. This was the low vendor. Their 2017 quote would still qualify them as the low vendor. They made modifications by working with park staff to make sure that their frames were compatible with our plastic lumber. They'd like to continue this process because it works so well, and the vendor provided a quality product that meets their needs.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion, Alderman Nicholson.
Is it for the west side?
For the north.
50/50.
Both sides.
60/40, 60 west side, 40 east side.
There's no west side.
Motion
Forward,
second.
forward.
I'll second it.
We have a motion
60/40.
and a second to approve the recommendation to purchase 100 sets of picnic table frames. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 10, discussion and action on the proposed Baird School property trade agreement. Guy?
Okay. Last spring, the Green Bay School District referendum passed to fund a new school to be built at Baird Park School site. The school district is interested in keeping the existing school building in place while construction of a new school is being developed. That way the students wouldn't have to be displaced or bused to alternate schools for 1 year. Unfortunately, the school district does not own enough property on the site to fit a new building without demolishing the old one. Shortly after the referendum passed, the school district contacted Parks Department to see if there was interest in property trade to make this work. Staff worked with the school district to develop concept for the redevelopment of the entire site. If this property trade is approved, the only park amenity that would remain intact would be our tennis courts and the parking lot near to develop concept for the redevelopment of the entire site. All other park amenities would be removed at this time. The current Baird Park school boundary consists of 20.02 acres, of which the school owns 6.06 acres. The park department owns the remaining 13.9 acres. If this property trade is approved, the school district would own 10.88 acres, and the park department would own 9.15 acres. We handed out a preliminary concept for you to look at here tonight about the property trade agreement that outlines the terms of the property trade. This agreement highlights what park amenities would be constructed at the new park school site, and the school district, what the school district would be responsible for funding for the redevelopment, and who is responsible for ongoing maintenance of these facilities. Staff would recommend the approval of this property trade be contingent upon the agreement to the terms spelled out in this agreement that we passed out here. Currently, the summer park program runs out of the room in the existing school. The school district has agreed to install a community room with a restroom in the new school that the park department can use in the summer months for the playground program. In addition, the school district will allow us to use other classrooms and the gym to run various recreation programs. The school district is proposing that the use of the school for the summer park program and the other recreation programs be consistent with the shared use agreement that the district has to be consistent with other schools. The city and the school district is currently in the process of updating this agreement. Since that agreement is still in the draft stage, we would recommend that the approval of the property trade also be contingent upon the approval and execution of the revised shared facility agreement. This would ensure that the park department would be able to use the school and other schools to run park programs out of.
Can I just add to
Yep.
that real quick? I do want to mention that these plans are very preliminary in concept form. This hasn't been presented to the public yet. The purpose of bringing it to the park committee first was to first determine if the city and city council and park committee were in favor of the property trade and the configuration of the new park. And so this is kind of the first step. If we're in favor of it, then they will proceed with having public input meetings, and the concept might change from there, along with the plan of the school, the layout of the school, that might change also.
Are there interested parties that would like to speak to the committee? Move to suspend the rules. By Alderman Weary, seconded by Alderman Nicholson, to suspend the rules. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, yeah, come on forward and give us your perspective on it.
Thank you.
My name's Mike Stango. I'm the Executive Director of Facilities with Green Bay Schools. I also have Ann Barsh. She's the Executive Director of Elementary Education, responsible for Baird School. Melissa Theo-Collar, who works with our legal department, that would be active in working on the agreement that would be finalized if this gets approved. I also have two members from Bray Architects who have been working with us, Nathan and Ryan, on this plan. So I brought them along basically to answer any questions that you may have. The school board has been looking at upgrades that we needed to do for Baird School for a number of years. We could never figure out how to rebuild Baird at the Baird site and keep kids in school for a year. Because this will be about a year and a half construction. We would like to begin in spring of 2018 to be occupied for the fall of 2019. Was mentioned, the plans we have are very preliminary. We've been using these for discussion. We have provided you, a list of what we would propose, and these items would be paid by the district through the referendum that we have already passed this past April. So we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
When the new building is finished and the old school is torn down, right?
That's correct.
And then what becomes of that site?
It's shown on the plan that right now there's proposed that would be locations of new athletic fields, basically the softball diamond and proposed soccer field. Now we'll continue to work with the Parks Department on what they actually would like there and how they would like those configured.
I think we all knew when the additions were proposed, not only here but at other schools, that there was adjoining parkland that we'd have to consider. I know in my district I also have Dan's school, and I think that's another one that we're probably going to have to talk about when we get to plans for that, I would think. And there may be others, but so it really doesn't come as a surprise. And, I guess I would recommend to my committee that we give preliminary approval to these plans, to the preliminary plans. Are there others? Are there others that would like to speak on it?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'd like to look at the plans. I just had a couple of questions. I know it's preliminary, obviously you're just trying to throw something out there. Basketball court, is that going away? Is there going to be one perhaps somewhere else?
We would relocate as part of the agreement the existing basketball standards onto the new hard surface playground, which is just shown to the east of the building. Now those playgrounds will still be configured a little bit. We're showing them that there's grass in between. What we would do is we'd run that hard surface directly up to the surface of the sidewalks and that to the school, so that during the winter and that we can maintain those and plow those and keep those open so they can be used year round.
It looks like going from 3 ball diamonds down to 1. Does the ball diamond include dugouts and maybe a batting or pitching cage and scoreboard, since we're going from 3 to 1? Maybe that's something we can consider. We're always in need of those things, and if we're going from 3 to 1.
Are there 3 there or 2?
Right now, there's 2 there. One of them is a lit field and one is not.
Okay.
What we're proposing in the new field, in this agreement, and obviously it's subject to change, we're still in initial stages, but they would basically rebuild this as a larger field than what's there now, so it would serve our needs a little bit better, and it would be a lit field also. In addition, they would do players' benches and concrete for them, along with bleachers and concrete for that.
So no dugout, just a bench on
It
concrete?
would, right now, that's how it's written, yeah, with appropriate fencing.
I think we might want to look at covered dugout, and, if we're going to build it, let's do it right.
So Dan, this diamond, number 3, that's history?
That's actually just like a practice field.
Okay.
They don't really play any games on
Okay.
it, so.
All right.
What league do you play here? Okay, so it's adults, not Little League.
You used to have Little League, not anymore? You used to have Little League, not anymore?
There's no Little League here?
Yes, we have a league there.
There's a little league.
Oh, there is Little
There
League?
is a Little League field,
Yes,
yeah.
T-ball, Little League.
So, I mean,
Adult
that's
football.
what I thought, so it's not
Adult
just for
football.
adults, if you wanted the dugouts and the different
Right.
things, I think that would fit perfectly with the entire concept. I think that was fine.
And the plan would be that we could also have football, because this will be a lit field, we could have football
That's-
inside inside the ball field. We do that in a number of other locations, so.
And all the expenses are through the referendum, right, all the relocation?
Right, we had spelled out
Yeah.
in the agreement that you have that, what we would be paying for it,
So we would be
maintaining.
paying for some?
Right now, right now, the school district would be paying for the whole field with all the things that I mentioned. The only thing that would not be in there right now is the dugout roofs. Everything else is listed. And if you take a look at it, it's all spelled out. It would be under the third item, under the site amenities, the city of Green Bay, the city of Green Bay will maintain.
All right, that's all I have right now, thanks.
Thank you.
Alderperson Dorr.
I do have a question. This is in my district, and so while I know that the district's not ready to go public with the plans, et cetera, what is the communication plan? I'm getting lots of calls about this, so if I can say, well, by such and such date, you will get a letter from the school district. What is the plan?
The plan right now is to have a staff meeting on the 21st and have a community meeting on the 27th. And then actually, I just got asked to come to the Schmidt Park Neighborhood Association
Okay.
on October 2nd.
Okay, I'll be there.
So that is the plan, but we are not going to publish that until we get approval, because we do not want to present a plan that isn't approved.
And, you know, that, an idea I might give you is that there is a neighborhood association group of presidents that meets once a month. And if you wanted to give some information to that group, they would put it in their newsletters then. And that, because it's not just Schmidt Park that's interested, it's Baird's Creek, and it's a lot of different neighborhoods are interested in what's going on.
Sure.
So that might be an easy way to get communication out.
Yeah, so as soon as we feel that we have the proper approvals, because we don't want to present a plan and then have it change. So as soon as we feel like we have proper approvals and the plan, you know, fairly finalized, which is getting close, then we'll pursue those.
Okay. All I was really interested in, I guess, is a date that I can say to people,
Right.
by such and such date about, you'll get information.
Yep.
So
If
probably
everything
sometime-
goes the way, and that's why we really rushed to try to get on tonight,
Okay.
is that if things go well, we would like to present it to our first public meeting on September 27th
Okay.
at Baird School.
Okay, any other questions?
One last thing, would you be opposed to just adding the covered dugout? I mean, you're building a dugout, it's just, it would be
I don't
covered and
think-
enclosed.
I don't think we're talking
That's all, I mean, they all
a
seem
lot
to be
of
going
money,
that
so-
way.
We could take a look.
Gets them out of the sun, gets them out of the rain, if we change that and brought it back, yeah.
I think we'd be fine with that.
This is preliminary.
Hmm?
This is preliminary.
Yeah,
Make
this
the
is-
changes you want.
I
This
know,
is
I'm just
preliminary,
adding
I
some
think.
suggestions. They wanted our input.
Right, I think those are
Thank you.
appropriate comments, and, you know, our staff, if they have comments on how to make it more
Well, let's
functional
make-
for the city, but, you know, by all means, this is an opportunity for us to work together with the school district to get something that's going to work for everyone, so, and I think that's what the taxpayers expect of us. So I guess what we're asking for tonight is preliminary approval so that they can proceed with development of their plans and public presentation of it. And they'll come back to us for final approval at some point. Is that done? Do you have other recommendations?
Yeah, so look, we would approve the Baird School Property Trade with Green Bay School District contingent upon the law department review, approval, and execution of the property trade agreement with the Green Bay School District, and the approval and execution of a revised shared facility use agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay School District.
Was there anyone else who wanted
Okay.
to speak to it?
Yeah, does anyone else want to speak to the committee on that? Okay.
All right, motion to return to regular order?
Okay, we have a motion to return to
Second.
regular order of business, seconded by Alderman Nicholson. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Do you want make a motion consistent with the recommendations from?
Yeah, I would make that motion and to, you know, for the discussions to include the items that I had mentioned, you know, if we're gonna rebuild it, let's build it to the standards that we think are, that we want. So, otherwise, the language is great.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Nicholson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, final thing is the direct, okay, thank you very much for being here, and look forward to further discussions on it. Okay, sorry to keep you waiting. Next thing is the director's report. We all received a written report. Are there anything you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a few things. The
Okay.
repairs of Fox River Trail north of Dousman has started this week. Perkins Tennis Courts was awarded to the low bid construction. This should begin soon. We met with Greg, our pool consultant, and a representative from Mertha Pools this week to discuss engineering revisions.
Approved.
So we can begin the work. An article regarding Fit in the Parks and the Green Bay RX series is being featured in a national magazine of health, recreation, parks and tourism, and public health, which is published through Indiana University. Got a copy of that article. We'd like to thank Dick Resch for his donation of $700,000 to the new wildlife sanctuary expansion.
What was that amount, Donnie?
$700,000. This Saturday is our Walk for Wildlife. Our featured animal this year is a swan. This Saturday, the city will also receive an award from the Citizens Group for Scenic Wisconsin. The city deck will receive the 2017 Outstanding Public Space Award. The Purple Optimist will be sponsoring a special needs night for special needs kids at Bay Beach Park on September 19th from 5:30 to 7, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive it and place it on file. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Well, very good. I think that's all business to come before.
Motion to adjourn.
Committee tonight. We have another committee, so a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. How long we
Opposed?
can,
We stand adjourned.
how long we can keep this thing going?
Ready to roll, Steve?
I wonder if
Let's
we
get
could
going.
reconsider the tree issue, please?